Every experiencer has to overcome ontological shock, and we have to do it while the world tells us we're crazy. Because of this, each of us has our own story, our own helpful perspective, our own set of tools. These are the stories we share in the Experiencer Workshop. What a wild morning. Something's up today. You know, there's an energy today that is really wild, which I watched this guy, Stefan Burns, on YouTube, and he talks about the space weather and the solar energy that's coming to Earth and stuff like that. And we just got blasted by 3 big coronal blasts.
I saw that. Yeah,
that could have something to do with it. But I really think too that it seems like the energy in this world is changing, and I think that a lot more people are starting to experience these weird things like astral projection and lucid dreaming. And
I've been noticing that there's been a lot more of me in my dreams. When I used to dream prior to this experience, it would usually be very like, there was a lot of like hedonism, almost like it was as my opportunity to play out carnal desires. This would most often happen when I was aware I was in a dream, you know, because a lot of times you're just in a dream and you don't even realize you're in a dream, and it's just as real as this is right now. But sometimes you're in a dream and then you're aware. You're like, oh, this is a dream. And when that would happen, that's when my like sort of, carnal instinct would kick in. And then I'd want to go and engage in like hedonism almost, you know, and now that's not like that at all. Now, most dreams that I have, I'm aware that I'm in a dream, and there is a tremendous degree of self-control and impulse control. And the more of me that is involved in the dream, the more control I have of that dream arena. Lucid dreaming and a lot of astral projection and, outer body experiences. And that began maybe 7-8 months ago. I would notice that at certain times in the day, my body would start vibrating. And at first it started in my face. My face would just randomly start vibrating. And then I would notice it in my diaphragm, especially around like 2:00 in the afternoon. If I kind of just, because I get home every day from work at 12:30 in the afternoon. And if I kind of was just like, I'm going to take a little nap, as soon as I would come up out of that nap, my whole diaphragm would be vibrant to the point where I could feel it. Right. I mean, I could feel it with my hand, like, oh my gosh, and I had never experienced anything like that in my life. And then eventually that turned into the onset of astral projection, where that high pitched ringing that we hear, that combined with the vibration, if you kind of focus in on that high pitched ringing, right? And it most often happens during the middle of the night. Like, let's say I wake up to go to the bathroom, and then I go to lay back down. It'll happen at that time, or in the morning. Like, let's say I usually get up at 6:30, actually I usually get up around 3:30, but let's say I get up at 3 instead of 3:30, and I say, oh, I'm just going to close my eyes for another half an hour. Well, then that's, I'll hear the high pitch ringing. I focus in on that, and then the vibration goes whoop, and then you'll feel your entire body go into a state of vibration, and then you just kind of lean into it. And I always lean into it with the intention of exploration and love, with no ulterior motive, really, and just go with it, And the first astral projection experience that I had, I came out of my body, and I was above myself over my bed, and I went through the floor. And I went into this giant antique place of like clocks and mirrors. And then there was these little spider entities that got attached to me. And then I became very fearful. And then I was shot right back into my body.
How long ago was that, by the way, Kevin?
That was about 6-7 months ago. Yeah, because I've spoken about that particular experience on other podcasts. But then there's been other experiences where while wide awake, I'm wide awake, I can feel my body go into like a state of vibration. And this is what happened again this morning. I am almost shot through like a tunnel. And, there's white dots, almost like stars, and you're, almost like when you're watching Star Trek and it goes into warp drive, they all start smearing. And I emptied out into, it was like a mosque with the pillars coming up and the ceramic tile floor, and almost like an Arabian mosque,
Right.
And there was maybe 50 or so, I want to say Muslim or Arabian people that were all in a state of worship. And at the front of them was I want to say like a goat figure sitting on a higher chair than the rest of them. And I went face to face with the goat, and I had the thought, don't lick the goat. And as soon as I had the thought, don't lick the goat, I licked the goat. And then I was shot out of it. And I remember being like, damn, I hope that goat knew that the only reason I did that was because I didn't want to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully there's a sense of compassion. But I'll say that the environment itself felt very serene, and I don't know exactly what that arena is.
Darius J. Wright, that guy who I think is the preeminent out of body, experiencer on YouTube right now. He talks about what you're talking about. He describes these places, these big halls, and what he says is these are real places. That these are actual places, and he knows what they're all called. He knows their names because he's been doing what you're talking about right there. He's been doing that experience almost every day since he was 12 years old, and he's in his 40s now. So for 30 years, almost every day, he's been doing what you're talking about, to the point where now he knows all these places by heart.
There's always that part of the mind that wants to say it's definitely this, but in 100% transparency, I just don't know. So I've experienced what I have perceived, I guess is the best way to put it, alternate realities, other timelines, where I am me and I am with my parents, but they're not the parents that I grew up with. I remember the one time I was with my mother and my stepfather who raised me, and they were very depressed, and they are not depressed people, in this reality. But there, my father was much shorter, and I could tell by looking around the house that there was a lot of like home repairs that needed to be done. And my stepdad, as I know him in this reality, he wouldn't have that at all. That would just irk the hell out of me. He'd have to fix it immediately as soon as something was leaking or broken or, but in this reality, the refrigerator door was like on there with some zip ties, and like there was just mail all over the place. And I remember feeling very sorry for them. And I went over and I gave my mother a hug. And then I went back up into this one room that we had, and then I came back into my body. And those experiences are usually preceded by, if I shut my eyes, I can see behind my eyelids the flashing of white light. There's always like this white kind of flashing, sort of melting into it light that occurs. And I know that there's about to be a shift of consciousness. I experienced one where I had a different girlfriend, and we had a very good relationship. And, and it's interesting with those ones because the awareness that I have now is experiencing those, right? So you really have to keep it together, because I'm fully aware of this reality where I'm friends with Tony and we do a podcast about, the TI. Like, I'm fully aware of all of this, but I'm experiencing it and have control over that person's body in that reality. So there's like this, a restraint that has to occur, like a respect.
So you can feel that you're in someone else's body.
I'm experiencing their reality through their eyes. Yeah.
Like Ann Tucker, who is a trance channeler. These entities taught her how to go into other people's bodies. She realized I have to be careful with this because, and so she realized, I'm never allowed to do that unless someone tells me it's okay.
There was one time where I had experienced, there was an earthquake in Japan like 2 years ago, and I had seen that but that was different. See, now that I witnessed a lot of times, a lot of these visions are in blue. Do you remember when you were younger, that magic 8-ball, and you would ask it a question and then the little thing would come up?
Oh yeah.
And it would come up in like blue writing. Mm-hmm. It looks like that. Like, that's what perception, I'm assuming, looks like, and I would witness that. So it's almost, so there's some times where you're like an observer to somebody else's perception. And then there's other times where you're actually perceiving as that person. And then there's the lucid dreams where it's as real as you are aware of it. I guess that's the best way to put it. So every reality is only as real as you are aware of the sensory input within that reality. If you were in a reality where there was no sense of smell, you wouldn't know any different unless you had the realization, oh shit, I'm supposed to be smelling something. And then you'd realize that you were in a different reality, right? So that's how that is with, when you can almost jump from a dream into a lucid dream, is that you sort of notice something like, oh, there's supposed to be a different sensory perception here. And that's what's missing. Now, that's not to say that the same thing doesn't occur with this reality. I didn't know that telepathy was a thing. So we're almost being introduced to these different perceptions that we didn't know were part of this reality. And that creates an ontological shock for us here as well. Right. You're like, oh, what's up with this reality? This wasn't what I thought it was. Right. Yeah. So it's like a dream, waking up from a dream, waking up from a dream sort of thing. There was other times where I could kind of just move my head and I would pick up on other people's thoughts. Or radio stations, I remember I was in a parking lot somewhere and I would move my head this way and I could hear somebody thinking about, just random thoughts. And then I remember I moved it this way and all of a sudden I tuned into some woman saying, now what did I do with that pen? I can't find that pen. And then I'd go this way and it was music. And then I'd go, and that was very bizarre. It was like, there was like different frequencies flowing through it. And me as a person within that conscious arena was able to flow through the different frequencies and pick up on them. Then I started lucid dreaming where I had control over the environment. Okay, because at this point I started to practice some serious self-control, because now more of my conscious awareness and wherewithal and a sense of right and wrongness and creating suffering in other people's lives is there. Right. It was no longer a free for all. Like, this is, I don't know how real this is. I'm going to take precaution.
Yeah.
So as soon as I become aware, I just stay still. I said, well, I'm not going to do anything. Hold on. Let me get my wits about me. And then a few months ago, I remember being able to look at something. I was in my grandfather's backyard. And I remember looking at a tree and I focused on a branch and the branch fell. And then I focused on, like, it was some sort of plant on the ground, and I focused on the plant and I had intentions of the plant just kind of breaking in half, and it broke in half, know? So then I started actually having, being able to have some sort of control over the environment of the lucid dream. Then there's these other astral experiences where the vibration begins to take over. So I'll talk about one that happened a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Came out of my body, and the next thing you know, I'm hanging upside down and I can feel something holding my feet, like by my ankles. And I'm slowly rotating by my ankles, and I'm in some like abandoned office area, just looking around at like old fluorescent lighting, and like there's nobody else in there. And I'm just watching, I'm just observing. Like, I'm not, exerting fear. I'm not exerting any emotion whatsoever. I'm just observing. But I do remember being like, well, this is odd. Yeah. And then shift, and then there's like a shift, and then you're like, boom. And then I came out of that. And then I was in a daycare. Like, I was in some sort of a daycare where my daughter was there and she was being babysat by another woman. And again, I'm aware that this is not my reality. Right. So I got to pretend like I know what the hell is going on. So like that seems to be a common theme with this. It's like, okay, I'm aware that I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and I need to just play along like I know who all these people are. And, you're almost like an actor unto yourself and your own reality. And, but yet the love is still there, right? I see my daughter and there's love there, right? So, and it's very difficult to tell, like, is this just a symbol of love? Is this just a concept of love that is appearing as my daughter that is keeping me in a state of love? That could possibly be it. Like, I'm not that, you know what I mean? Who knows where the line is with all of this, because the dialogue that you have with people and the sensation and the perception is very much like this. And yet at the same time, again, all of me is there. So I'm questioning the entire time how much of this is my own mental projection and thought form, and how much of this is actually some sort of a different astral plane. And then I was shifted out of that, and I went into, now sometimes the voices are there and sometimes they're not. Right. And I think that was also a key indicator of what I'm experiencing, because a lot of times when I astral project, the voices aren't there. I'm in a place where there's no voices. But with the lucid dreaming, they're there a lot of times. So then I was shifted into like an office building. And there was a woman who immediately came up to me. I think I shared this with you, and she wanted me to give my opinion on what kind of glasses she had just bought. Do you like these? What do you think of these glasses? And I couldn't figure out who I was in relationship to this woman. And I'm looking around, and it's like this big, almost like you would think like a very uppity sort of office complex that had like, Starbucks in there. And then there's like, like a big, like gold handrails going up in an elevator. And, it was very like businessy. And again, I'm just playing along with it. And then I started feeling very weird. Like I started getting overly dehydrated, and I had to excuse myself and go into the bathroom. And I remember like spitting into the sink. Right. And then one of the voices came in at that moment and said, that proves that simulation theory isn't real. And I said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I got to get out of this bathroom. Right. So I come out of the bathroom. I walk past the woman and I say, I want to see what's outside. And as soon as I go down the stairs to go outside, another one of the voices comes in because there was a bank off to the left and it says, Kevin, go into the bank. I said, I'm not going to that bank, because I'm so used to just not listening to the voices. Like they don't dictate my life and what I do. So like, no, as soon as I hear them tell me to do something, I assume that's exact opposite of what I'm supposed to do. So I just keep it moving.
Right.
And right before I could get out the front door, I got shot back into my body. That was bizarre. So this morning I woke up to go to work at like 3:00 and I had my alarm set for 3:30, and we've been slammed at work lately and I've been going at it pretty hard. And I said, you know what? I still have vacation time left before, to use up before the end of the year. So I said, you know what? I'm taking a day off. So I called out of work. I go and I lay back down. The flashing thing starts happening. Now with my eyes open or my eyes closed, I can see a whole field of stars. Everything is just stars. And then they start swirling, spinning. Right, almost to the point where it want to make you nauseous, get like seasickness, and then that slowed down and it got steady, and then Anthony, like my whole body went into a state of vibration, and then I just started shooting. I mean, like, dude, I don't know how. It felt like I was just going. I don't know, but I could feel and hear wind come and going over my ear holes. And then I would feel myself slow down, shift, keep going straight, go up, go down, almost come to like an intersection. Like I felt like there had to be a pause to let other passing parties go by, and then boom, and then start shooting again. Right. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at another, again, to me, what seemed to be another one of my timelines. But this time I'm looking at it like tunnel vision. Like I can see it like this, and everything around that is hazy, but I can see clearly through this. Okay. And I have full wherewithal of both realities. I have full awareness that I am in bed and yet I am doing this at the same time. So there's two realities. That's the first time that's ever happened. Usually it's one or the other. Okay. I'm either totally into this one, but I have like an understanding that I'm supposed to be here, or I'm here and I have an understanding that that's going on. With this time this morning, there was both. I had full awareness of being in bed. Like I could have gotten up and walked around and this still would have been happening, is what I'm saying. At the same time as this, like I could open up my eyes and still see it, or my eyes were shut and I could see it more clearly.
Almost like an overlay.
Exactly. Right. So what I'm seeing is my daughter again, but she's taking a nap underneath of a blanket, and I'm in a state of REM sleep. Okay. So I'm aware, like, have you ever had, what men refer to as morning wood?
Yeah. A time or two. Yeah.
Right. A time. Yeah. I used, all the time. Right. So this happens quite naturally with REM sleep. Is men will get in an erection. It's like a very natural process. So I'm aware that I'm astral projecting on this lower frequency. And because I'm on this lower sleep REM frequency, I have an erection. But yet at the same time, I'm like zoomed in on this other timeline where my daughter is there. So it was very very confusing for me. Okay. I had to like totally process like, oh, whoa, why do I have an erection right now while I'm viewing this? Okay. And if I didn't have the capacity to understand that, I would completely misinterpret the bodily erection as it being a part of that other awareness.
Right. And then it would have created a guilt trigger in you.
Well, it still did. It's just natural, right? Until I really sat and processed, like why, there is no reason for, a father to have an erection around like they're 2 year, I don't care what timeline they're on. So then once that shut off, right? Once that shut off and I came back in, full awareness of this, I had morning erection, and then but I was awake. So there was like, what we refer to as like a heterodyning, where two frequencies are brought together to create a whole new frequency. And it was a lower theta frequency, REM frequency, brought together with an awake frequency. And the physiological symptoms that occur with these lower theta frequencies, which, one of them is morning erection, came together with the awake one. So then, and this is when I reached out to you, because I know that the community that you're involved in is the one where people are having spontaneous erections, and it's a phenomenon that's pretty large, right?
Yeah.
So that's what kind of hit me this morning, and I'm like, I'm wondering very deeply if that has something to do with all of this, because if you look up why these erections happen in alignment with lower theta frequencies, and then if you take into the possibility that what is happening as a society is this sort of awakening where the conscious mind is slowly being integrated into the unconscious mind and vice versa, right? Like shadow content is coming up and our moral compass, the conscious mind, is going inward into this part that's usually a free-for-all of chaos. And the two are slowly sort of kind of coming together at a frequency level. And I think, this is just my personal theory based off of what I've been experiencing. That's the second time that's happened with this erection thing where I've gotten extreme confusion. And now it makes sense why that's happened.
I haven't had a lot of like crazy lucid dreams in a while, but just to real quick summarize kind of my dream experience too. Whenever I was 11 years old, I had a crazy thing happen. I was 11 or 12. So I ended up calling the one that I had whenever I was 12. I ended up calling it my 3-year dream. It felt like I was really literally in another world for 3 years, waking up every day in this, in this other world. And then I was like 15 or 16 whenever I finally woke up and I was back in this world. And it messed me up. They're talking about ontological shock. I mean, it messed me up so bad. And that's why I started I felt like my life mission after that was to show people that there's something going on here that you people aren't appreciating, don't understand. And we need to be looking into this stuff, That my mother, whenever she was in her 20s, she had an out-of-body experience where she wanted to go out of body, and she started practicing it. And she went out of her body, and she went out onto the street. She rose up and looked at her body on the bed, and then she went out onto the street, and she saw something that happened. Almost like, I imagine if there was a car wreck, or they were cleaning the streets, and they normally wouldn't at that time or whatever. But there was something that was happening that I can't remember that made her go, "Oh, that's out of the ordinary for that to be happening right now at 3:00 in the morning or whatever." And then the next day she found out that was actually happening. And so she knew she was actually out there. It wasn't just a dream. She was actually out there on the street, And so then she also had a future dream where she dreamed that she was that she was fatter and that she was working at this place that had totally it was a place from her youth, but it was totally changed in our hometown, called the Dairy Boat. And in this dream, it was totally realistic. And she heard a ding, which is somebody pulling up to the drive-through. And while she's going through that, she's like, the Dairy Boat doesn't have a drive-through. What am I thinking, And she hears a ding as she's hitting the cash register button, and the cash register's popping out, the ding, and somebody says window, and then she wakes up. And 4 years later or 5 years later or whatever, she had gained some weight and she was pregnant and she was working at the dairy boat, which had been completely renovated. And they had a window now. And that exact moment, happened to her where she hit the register button to get the cashier out, and she heard the ding and somebody goes, window. And so there's that. Then there's the fact that like every member, there's the 4 people in my immediate family, we've all seen the future in a dream. I've had 2 of those. I've had 2 of those where I saw the future in a dream, but I haven't had a lot of these things lately. So for me lately, I think it's because I spent so much time dulling all of my senses and being in such a fear-based area, a fear-based place all the time, that I think that I wasn't able to have any of these kind of experiences because I was filling my head with booze and cigarette smoke and drugs and for so long now. It's been a long time for me. I've been clean for a decade and over, but I've still been smoking, and I just now quit smoking whenever I had surgery recently. So 2 weeks.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you. I'm 2 weeks off, and I'll tell you, like, I've been fasting more, I've been meditating more, and I've been smoking less or not at all. And I'm seeing these things starting to happen more. And so I think that what a lot of people are probably experiencing is that like what I look at it as is that I had this ability, my family all had this ability from a young age, but we put bad food into our bodies. We put bad substances. We kept ourselves so clogged up. We weren't a clean vessel, prepared to have these kinds of experiences. And anger and fear also will dirty up the vessel, right? And so I was going to say, like, I mean, it definitely seems like all this is fear is the governor for the whole experience, right? It's what puts the clamps on the lucid dreaming, the out of body, the astral projection, all that kind of stuff. Fear is what stops and dictates it all, right? Don't you think?
I would agree. I totally agree with that. Fear and our attachments, because you gave up worldly attachments, right? The things that keep us bound to our existence here, this illusion of a self, like I am my shoes, or I am my car, I am my house, I am my, like these are all the things that I am my job, I am how much money I have in my bank. Once you start shedding these attachments and stop identifying with impermanent stuff in this world, well, then you're a little more freer, then you kind of like, but that was the first step for me. I had to get rid of the addictions. I had to get rid of the booze and the drugs and the pornography and these things that were constantly pulling on my mind. You must do this next thing next.
And I know you know this, but let me say too, what I've realized recently is that the fear of death is so much greater than we all realize. And when the fear of death in the collective, so maybe not the fear of death in you, but I think that we are also very much influenced by the thoughts of the collective. And so the collective energy on this earth is so scared of death in this realm that it creates in us this incredible fear of death. And any time that you solidify yourself in this world with those cravings and all those things, what it's really doing is it's making you go, I'm scared of death. I'm scared of this experience ending. I'm locking myself into it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. You're just kind of filling your headspace in so you don't have to think about the fact that you're currently in a state of dying. And I think that that's one of the main reasons that with this experience, it immediately threatens your life. That's a common thread with most targeted individuals, is that it threatens to kill you. Before I had the 24/7 voices, Rebecca and I were traveling across the country, and we were in Colorado Springs outside of Denver, and we got a hotel room at a casino for the night. And I was getting blasted with what felt like somebody from the room above me with energy, and my heart's pounding. It's just going. I think I'm going to have a heart attack. And then I would move, and then it would come from the room next to me. I'm getting these energy blasts, right? Coming from everywhere. And then I'd go into the bathroom because I'm kind of freaking out and I'm getting angry now, right? I'm getting ready to go kick somebody's door in. Like, that's how I would get with this. That's a lot of people get like that. And at one point I went upstairs and started pounding on the door above us. And then I'm hearing the voices, and they kept saying, they're going to shoot you through the window. Johnny, they kept naming the one voice Johnny. They said, Johnny's going to shoot you through the window. And I remember at one point, because I was very defiant and rebellious at that point, I remember going over to the window and opening it up, and just like, I was like a madman, and like, I was just a total madman. And I'm standing there and I'm looking out, and there was like a mountainside right there. And I'm looking and I'm thinking that there's some guy named Johnny on the mountainside with a sniper rifle that's trying to shoot me through the window. And I remember looking, and I put my forehead on the glass. Just like this, I put my forehead on the glass. I'm like, bring it on, right? Because I mean, that's how I would get. Yeah. I was like, if you're gonna do this, do it. I ain't got, whatever. But nothing ever happened.
So you would feel these energies from other. It felt like it was coming from another person in another room. Like you didn't think, oh, this energy is just here in the room with me. It felt like it's definitely coming from another person.
Well, I didn't have a choice. Like at that point in my life, I knew nothing about astral projection or the astral realm or other entities or other dimensions. Like I was completely ignorant and clueless, and my ignorance was used. It was used to put my life in jeopardy. Seemingly put my life in jeopardy,
Just like when you come out of, like you're saying, when you start to first have the out-of-body experience, and everyone that has the out-of-body experience explains this, that's why it's called sleep paralysis, and it's so feared. But once you get past that fear of thinking, oh, this thing can hurt me, like the spiders, whenever you experience the spiders, if you had known, which now you probably know, they won't hurt you. They can't hurt you.
Right.
You're an eternal being, probably, as far as we can figure out, you probably are something, but they definitely can't hurt you. And that's proven by other out of body practitioners,
Yes. There's a commonality with a lot of targeted individuals. One of the precursors that people say, and we just got somebody else in the room that would happen like this. They started meditating, and then they started having a TI experience, or they're doing methamphetamine, and then they started having a TI experience, or any sort of a stimulant, or they started doing the gateway tapes and they started having a TI experience. And they all three of those things have something in common, and it puts you into a state of sleep paralysis. Essentially, right? You're awake, but you're in a lower, brain frequency. Even when you're on meth, you feel like you're up, but eventually your brain desperately has to come down, and when it comes down, it's completely depleted of dopamine and serotonin, leaving only adrenaline and cortisol, which is fear, right, and paranoia. And now you're still awake. Your body is still up. Your heart's still racing, but your brain is desperately trying to come down and into REM mode. So you're awake, your brain is asleep, and you're filled with fear. This is what's happening, right? And now you're being toyed with and you're being played with. And that's what happened with me. And the same thing happens with people in states of meditation. And the same thing has been happening. I've been finding in Buddhist literature with meditators that have been doing this for thousands of years, that they get, attacked by the same thing. And there's all kinds of theories about that, like lower vibrational entities are more carnal based, they're more, in Buddhism, they refer to them as hungry ghosts. They're almost like they're these beings with huge stomachs, but yet they have very small necks and small mouths, right? Like they have this insatiable appetite, but they can't feed it.
Feed very much.
So they're constant, right? So they're constantly craving and they're never satisfied. So, so there's that, and that's how they kind of describe it. So I feel like we're all sort of saying the same thing. Like there's like a dozen different ways to say the same thing, and everybody's trying to interpret it the best way that they can according to their current experience, using the terminology and lingo and labels and language of how whatever they're trying to define it as. And even with the gateway tapes, people start doing the hemisync, and now they're mixing different brain frequencies, same exact thing.
Right.
Now they're having a targeted individual experience.
Wow.
And what is, the best way that I can define what these voices are is they are representatives of fear and ego. It's as if you have a clog in a pipe somewhere and you can't figure it out, and all your shits just keeps backing up. And now you got stuff flowing into your home and everything's clogged and it's a mess and you can't find out where the pipe is. Well, this thing starts screaming, I'm right here. This is where the clog is. Deal with me, and it's a process unclogging it. Like there's a lot of stuff that you have to get through. There's a lot of emotional baggage. There's a lot of personality baggage. There's a lot of guilt, learning to accept myself and the breadth of my experience, and learning to be the breadth of my experience, like being me in my fullest, and incorporating everything that I have ever done in my past into the person that I am now, and utilizing that. I feel like there's a lot of unacceptance. This kind of goes into the territory of, the relationship between compassion and emptiness, which is what we were talking about yesterday. And there really is, in my opinion, no greater experience that somebody can have than the TI experience to understand the relationship between compassion and emptiness, because your explanation towards what this is, like, let's say we take the Buddhist approach and we say that they're hungry ghosts, right? Well, now these were once human beings that died in their attachments that you and I were just talking about, with their alcoholism and their drug addiction, and they're still in a state of suffering and they don't even know it. They're so engorged and engulfed in their state of suffering that they don't even know that they're stuck. They're unaware. They're completely unaware. And they're trying to just fulfill and never gratified. So in that sense, yeah, you'd want to express compassion towards that, right? But with the understanding that behind all of that is emptiness, meaning there's nothing there. There's really no satisfaction with that at all. Satisfactions are like appetites. I'm satisfied, and then I just want to be satisfied again. Like, it's a never-ending cycle of satisfaction and gratification. I'm like, oh, I have an urge, I have a craving, let me gratify it. Well, there's going to be another one right behind it. Like, that's just how they go. So, and that's cause and effect over and over and over again. Right, and this is the other degree of emptiness, or what we are experiencing is entirely an orchestration, and they're just actors, all on this stage that we call Earth, this physical plane that we call Earth. And then behind that is also emptiness, right? Meaning, just picture any famous actor that you've ever seen that has died on screen. Well, they didn't die. They're actually alive, and they're living in their Hollywood mansion, and they're doing just fine. The act on the screen was entirely empty. The only thing that was real about it was your response to it, your emotional response to watching a movie.
Right.
And a lot of the TI experience is like that as well, right? So we respond to it emotionally, and our emotional response to it is what gives it validity and a sense of realness and reality. But behind it is just all an orchestration and theatrics, and it's entirely empty. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you have to learn how to have self-compassion for yourself, because there's a lot of gullibility and stupidity that follows with certain realizations that you have. So, there's this constant agreement, disagreement, and relationship with compassion and emptiness, with this experience, that if you can see that, and really dedicate your mind to developing, compassion and emptiness, that you can, and that's a very difficult one. That's like, even in like Buddhism, or if you ever listen to like Ram Dass, or that's a very, that's like a very advanced form of enlightenment, is a person that has the capacity to have a relationship between compassion and emptiness, seeing the emptiness behind the act, but understanding that the actor is unaware that they're acting, and having compassion for their ignorance.
Right. I mentioned that guy who was the what I see as the main out of body state guy. His name is Darius. And he says that the main thing, if he was going to list one thing basically for people to embrace, to be able to deal with these out of body states and the fear and all that, is unconditional love. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to be all about unconditional love, and every TI needs to make this their pillar, that the rock that they build their house on. Because I do think that every single TI and every single person is on a unique journey, obviously. And what works for one person won't work for you. And so you take in all this information, and then you have to figure out what works for you specifically. But he says that unconditional love is the thing. And I used to look at that, and most people do, that you say, yes, I have unconditional love for all these beings around me, for all these people, and for the world. And then that means they get to run over me. I love them, so they get to run over me. And it's like, no, do you also love yourself? How much do you love yourself? And I think that for a lot of TIs, that is a huge problem. How much do you love yourself? And are you forgetting that you actually need to love yourself just as much as you love anyone else out there. And so I'm saying, this is not the key for everyone, because there's a lot of people out there right now who would hear this and go, I have no problem loving myself, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I have plenty of self-love. I have an ego you wouldn't even believe, Tony. But for me, that's what I needed is I had the love for everyone else, but until I also started loving myself at that same level or more, then I could not balance.
What you said about with Darius and fear with all of this, even from a biblical perspective, right? This was something I had shared with Alex this morning in 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torment. He that fears is not made perfect in love, right? So, but looking at that, we see that, what is love to you? Like, what do you actually, what is your definition of love? If we can get a little intersubjective for a moment here, right, and kind of compare our understanding of what love is. Like, what is it to you?
Grace is the first word that comes to mind, like an appreciation for who someone is, regardless of what that means. You know what I mean? Like an appreciation for someone regardless of their bad parts.
So more of like an agape love. I guess I at this point, I view it as a combination of, so I view it as like a byproduct of a battle almost, right? So if we can look at like good versus evil, or, if we're looking at the very dualistic nature of hope and hopeless, and compassion and no compassion, and right and, and the way that battles out at like a biochemical level, and just constantly leans in on itself and balances itself out, and too much here and not enough here, and then at the very top we have this all-encompassing understanding of wisdom that sees it all and looks down and says, yeah, it's all a shit show, but it's my shit show and I am love, right? So it's like it's the byproduct of all the mess and all the mayhem and all of it, but it requires everything. It requires fights and suffering, and it requires triumphs and overcoming. It requires being cheated on and cheating on somebody else, and then learning the lesson from that and learning not to do that again, and how that hurt, right? So you don't hurt somebody else, and then it requires hurting somebody else, and then that person coming back and wanting to argue with you, and you feeling their pain, like I was the cause of that suffering, and then you also suffering. It's this constant molding, right? That's just continually refines this definition of love, that eventually learns to look down and respect all of it, because without all of it, it wouldn't exist in the first place, right? And the more that we can kind of get into that all-encompassing, even in Buddhism they refer to it as metta, which is like a loving kindness. I was listening to Ram Dass this morning, and one of his more popular quotes is, you can only get so far away from your neurosis before you begin to love them. Meaning, like, you can only separate yourself from the parts that you don't like so far, right? Or from the parts of you that are very neurotic, like that you don't like, before you begin to love them aspects of you, because then you begin to understand from a distance that that's what shaped you. That's the chisel on the sculptor stone.
That's right. Your thing was you would say, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. For a while, my thing was, whenever I would be talking to or dealing with the voices, I would say, yeah, I'm imperfect, and I would do something, and I would go, oh, look at that imperfection happening right there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Wow, what an imperfect person. Yeah, I am not perfect. Yeah. You're right.
That's a beautiful relationship with that imperfect. Like the fact that life even exists here, biological life and awareness exist here, right? And consciousness, and the fact that we have evolved to this speaking, able to sort of do things and tell stories and have emotions and have a reaction with this stage. It's perfect. Like, the stage itself is perfect, and it's just us with our opinions and melodrama. We give it an opinion, and we say, that sucks, right? No, it doesn't suck, right? Underneath of your opinion, the stage is still perfect, right?
That's right.
We enter onto this perfectly evolved and formed stage, and we point at it and we go, I don't like that. We give it an opinion and say that sucks and I don't like that and I blah 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 and I want this and I want that and she sucks and I don't know why she's doing that and then we just shit all over ourselves.
It's so true, man. So often what we are running into in this world and what's caused us so many problems and so much anguish is that we aren't ourselves. We say one thing and then we do another. Okay, we need to break out of fear. Well, how do we break out of like things that are so much ingrained in us? How do we not fear for our children? I think about the greatest love and fear in the world. The greatest love creates the greatest fear, and vice versa, in my opinion. When you look at the greatest love out there, it is your children. So that creates your greatest fear. Your greatest fear is that you'll lose them, that they'll be hurt. And so how do you lose those fears? How do you get over this, and I'm not saying we have to, but I'm just saying these ones that are so ingrained in us, like we should all wear clothes. Well, why are we wearing clothes? Why are we wearing clothes so much? Well, yeah, because you don't want to get frostbite or whatever on your nipples. That's fine. But also, it's because we're ashamed. And and the more that we would not be ashamed of our bodies and not wear clothes, and maybe I know people are saying you need to go start a nudist colony, Tony.
I view the voices as, like I said before, representatives of fear and ego. But if you break that down even more, what they're representatives of is instinctual residue, right? This sort of, right? Because if you look at, we're the most advanced as far as we can observably see. Now, I don't know anything about extraterrestrials or anything. I have yet to have one come and sit down and have tea with me. But as far as us on this planet, us humans are the apex predator, like we're the top of the food chain. And then below us, it gets very instinctual: reproduction, hunger, fight or flight, right? But then there's us, and we shouldn't have to be doing that shit anymore. We shouldn't have to be, because we're just humans, right? But yet there are humans that want to treat other humans as subhuman, and we sort of want to classify, and then we're still kind of creating fear on one another. There is a transition that occurs, like I was saying before, even with my dreams. And once the conscious arena starts going into the unconscious arena and vice versa, and that veil is torn, you find out that what you're encountering and what you're coming face to face with is instinctual residue. Why are you still engaged in fight or flight? Why is your ego still so much involved in your human experience when you have evolved to the capacity to not have to live like that anymore, right? So, right, a lot of it doesn't make sense why we're still stuck doing this, but greed, anger, and delusion, right, our worldly attachments, is what keeps us stuck in these instinctual residues. Now, there's instinctual residue, and then there's spiritual instinct. Right. So I'm finding that what's happening is that I'm making this transition where I'm burning off instinctual residue and I'm coming into a place of spiritual instinct, where the way that I respond to this world that is still entirely engulfed in fear and ego responds in a spiritual way. Like, I don't have to question myself as much, but that requires your conscious mind, first of all, getting clean, getting rid of your attachments, learning how to appropriately think in terms of, will this next move create suffering in my life or the lives of other people? Having a sort of precepts, like it takes practice. Like, you really have to buckle down and I don't want to say identify yourself, but you want to apply certain precepts to your life that begin to bring about a sense of moral uprightness, I guess is the best way to put it. Not being uppity, but just, doing the next right thing. Not being a shithead, not treating other people like shit, not allowing your actions and the ripples that you create in life to be the cause of suffering in the lives of other people, right? And then once you do that, that begins to sort of leak into your unconscious arena, and it's noticeable in your lucid dreams and in your dreams and in your self-control. And then that begins to sort of come upward, right? So there's like this intertwining of the frequencies, that are coming together and creating new frequencies.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I really feel like a lot of this is the transition from instinctual residue into spiritual instinct, where I'm letting go of these old patterns of behaviors that are part of this planet, and I'm moving on to these new things that are now my resonance. This is now my very being. I don't even have to think twice about how to respond to this. This is my new perspective, and that is who I am.
If you don't ever make mistakes, you can't get into the place that you're talking about spiritually and having a practice. You have to make some mistakes and mess up in order to find your right path and find your actual truth, because that's part of the process of discerning your spiritual truth. Is dealing with all that residue takes puts you in places that suck. You know what I mean? And you have to allow yourself to go, I'm going to mess up here, and I'm just going to be, and then I'll learn from it. And if I hadn't messed up, I wouldn't have learned from it. That whole thing,
Right. Well, that's the line between empathy and intolerance that I'm constantly redefining and renegotiating at all times. The more I move away from the old, I don't want to say the old toxic lifestyle, because that's still part of my life experience. That's still, what I went through, and that's still who I am now, and it's made who I am. But I don't engage in that sort of behavior anymore. And the more that I move away from that, the more I'm inclined to safeguard who I am now and not allow those sort of behaviors to come anywhere near me. And even that, I'm in a transition state with that. That's not anywhere where it needs to be, because now I'm still, if you look at that really closely, I'm still engaged in fear, right? Like, because now there's what I'm basically saying is that I don't want that near me, because I have this hidden fear within me that it might be hindered or it might be attacked, right? So I kind of have to self profess that, So, and I'm working through that. I am and I don't know. And that's constantly getting molded over and over again as I continue to grow and progress with my spiritual walk, even with the community, right? Even with the community building, that defining line between empathy and intolerance, and there's still a sense of fear there as well. Well, and I'll say this, there's a sense of fear, and there is also, just a level of progress that has occurred that I don't want to have to keep going back and dealing with, if I'm being completely open and honest. Okay. Like, I don't want to have to keep going back and explaining to people, over and over and over again, that it's not your neighbors, that it's not it gets old. I'm sorry. And I hate to say that, but it gets tiresome. It's energy draining. I could be in a great place and I'm like, man, I'm really moving forward. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, I'm drugged back to where I once was, because I'm still involved in a community of pulling people out of the trenches and moving on in life. And, so there's this constant back and forth, and how much to allow that in and how much to let it go. So I've basically written the rules out in Positive TI, so that if somebody posts something that is outside of the guidelines, the message that they get is essentially what would be how I would respond in the comments anyway. It's not your neighbors. That's that's just a very sort of a precursor delusion that they put you through like that. So I've reworded and restructured the rules in the community so that they are basically the response that I would give anyway. But then, of course, then people will mod mail me and, you don't allow free speech and free writing. It's, so again, empathy and intolerance.
I'm so glad we have more videos on the Parawareness YouTube channel now, because now that you can say, hey, go watch the videos. There's plenty of content in those videos that will get you this way better answers than I can get you texting you for the next 4 hours. Right. You know what I mean? If you just go do your homework, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, but if you just go do your homework and watch those videos in that collection and go look at all the posts on Positive TI throughout its history, there's enough material out there that I think you don't need me. And I'll tell you, dude, it's so tough, because it reminds me of how, I used to be a traveling musician for many years. And when you do a cover song, you cover your favorite songs. Obviously, you're like, I love that song. I want to play it. I want to be that band playing this song on stage. And then what happens is about the 30th time that you play it, because you're playing 4 nights a week. And so you're playing that. And so after 2 months, you're already like, well, I hate that song now. And when you think about those people, who are playing their hits and they're like 60 years old and they've got hits from when they were 20, they hate that song so bad that it's like, you know what I mean? It's, you can't, no one should be forced to do that. In my opinion, and no one should be forced to talk to people who are still on that base level of going, well, it's my neighbors. And if I tell them, well, guess what? Go watch this material. Here's all this. Go read this material. And that's enough for you to get it. And if they say, no, you need to talk to me, then no, that's on them. But it really is. It feels like the Rolling Stones playing Satisfaction at age 70. You know what I mean?
Unless you're getting paid like a huge sum of money for it.
This is a great point.
You know, then you better put on a show for me. I'm paying to see this, you know. But
you're right.
Just taking time away from my family and stuff to keep rehashing the same repetitive conversation. You're right. You're absolutely right. Like, no, all of the stuff is right there. Everything that I have been through, it's already all written out. There's videos out. The 12 steps are out. Other podcasts are like, everything is already out there. Like, I will push you towards that, but please, like, I don't have hours every night to take away from my family to go over this with every new person that comes into, because even we have the sponsorship. We even have the sponsorship thing set up where you can have a sponsor. There's people out there that are willing to take you under their wing and help you along with this on a more one-on-one basis. Like, everything is set up for you to not have to, you know, for any of us to actually continue to have to do this over and over and over again. We should all be slowly progressing more and more and more. And then the people that are at maybe like an earlier stage where they're just starting to come out, well, then they should be helping somebody else come out, you know? And that's what I'm hoping happens. I'm hoping as the years go on, and I'm already slowly starting to see that, but I'm hoping as the years go on that progresses more. And almost like, you know, how AA or NA got started. It started off with a couple dudes sitting in a living room, and then they put all the material together and the literature and then the steps, and then they had the sponsorship program, and that took a long time to get to take off. And now it's helping people worldwide. So we'll see.
I'll go ahead and throw out this is an actual call to action. If you want to support us, we need support, and the community, TIs, experiencers, they need support. And so step up. Give a little bit of your time. You don't have to give as much as I do because I made it my life, basically. If you're in those early phases, nobody expects you to do anything. But if you have come out of it a little bit and you're starting to see yourself progress, it will be a helpful thing in your journey and in your healing to give a little bit of that to other people and to be there for them. Because we do see, how many people, Kevin, have we seen come into the Parawareness Discord chat and feel like they got something out of it, or come on to Positive TI, and then you never see them again. And I understand, and that's fine. You know what I mean? I get it. But at the same time, like, couldn't you give a little back? Yeah.
Well, I understand for a lot of people that are able to move on, it's like walking away from a car crash that you should have died in, and you don't want to go back to that scene of the accident because you don't want to have to relive it. I get that. Yeah. I really do get that. But even step 12, I make that known that I understand that, but I do ask that, you know, something, you know, just, I mean, if you could offer, even writing out your testimony, and you don't even have to engage with the commentary, but if you wrote out your testimony and posted it on Reddit in the community, that's there. Then it's there. It's always there. Somebody can always go in and I can always share that with somebody else that may be able to relate to it. And what does that take out of your time? It doesn't take that much just to write out your testimony and then post it and walk away. You don't ever have to come back to it again, but they can be used. Yeah. You don't get paid for doing this?
We do have a PayPal link that I put on our YouTube channel. So maybe I will someday.
I thought you were raking it in, Tony.